I'm here today to share a little bit about developing world-class infrastructure and systems for better Malaysia, and some slides I'd like to show you, some of which I obtained from Pemandu. Alright, so, well, they are nice people, I have no issue with them. And we work along, we get along very well, no issue. So, if someone can give me the clicker and I'll just... Oh, you are holding it, yeah? Right. For your information, just in case you're not aware, and I'm not selling the construction industry, but I think it's useful for us to take note of this bit of statistic. GDP growth for 2012, right, of the different sector that we use to measure GDP growth. Which sector do you think grew the fastest last year? Let's take a guess. Oh, yeah, you're right. Construction. Can't help but gloat a little bit. The facts state that agriculture grew 1% last year, right? And mining grew 1% last year. Manufacturing did a credible 4.8% last year. Services, and that includes all the banking and all the financial services, and also all the consulting services and all these other guys who are here, very highly regarded gentlemen, I must admit. Yeah, they are highly regarded. And that's 6.4%, a very good 6.4%. And construction did 18.1%. I suppose the numbers are correct. Overall GDP growth last year was 5.6%. Okay. So this year, first quarter, construction did, I think, 15%, if I remember correctly. So if we are talking about the various subsectors, construction plays a very big role in helping to drive the GDP for Malaysia for these last 2 years. And that's what, is that my slide? I don't think that's my slide. Hello, who's handling this one? Oh, okay. Am I clicking the right place? Forward, no. Wrong slide. Wrong slide, yeah. So, must tell more stories now. Not about us, no. Okay. Well, I think the key thing you need to take note of, as much as my topic is supposed to be, would be the fact that the construction industry has been an important driver for economic growth in our country for the last few years, in fact. The external market, is very dependent on the world market, and the world market is at this point somewhat struggling. And because of that, manufacturing that is tied to exports are facing a bit of a challenge. And many of the export-related manufacturers are experiencing difficulties. In fact, even some companies like Maxis, Telco, should I say that? Offering voluntary retrenchment thing. So it's not like everything is perfect, but there are things that are doing well. And most definitely, the construction sector has done well in the last few years, and the government vision to use projects like the LRT extension, the MRT, and all this infrastructure development to drive the economy in these times when things are uncertain is actually a very important thing. Okay? Part of that is to do with driving to ensure internal consumption will be able to compensate for the loss in terms of external growth. Yeah? So this is where we are. And just so they share that, this is KL, we all know that, right? I don't think any of us have not seen this before. Now, we are responsible for LDP, one of the intra-city highway, and I have to admit that sometimes the Sunway toll plaza looks more like a huge parking lot, Okay? So this is the situation with car ownership in our country. And as you can see, Malaysia is quite high up there. You say Malaysia, it's not so bad, but you say KL metropolitan, it's very high. We have almost like 600 cars per 1,000 population. That means almost every individual owns a car. And that includes wife, daughter, kids, everything else. Yeah? And the result of which is, of course, you've got a problem with traffic woes on the road. The problem is exacerbated by the fact that public transportation is actually declining. Surprise? Yeah. We used to hit about 35% of our the public going to work by way of public transportation. Today it's down to only about 16%. That's not today, that's 2010. I'm not sure what's the situation today, in fact. And if you look at the world around us, you can see how far they are compared to how far we are, right? And if you look at Hong Kong, that's Hong Kong. 90% of the people who go to work in Hong Kong make use of public transportation compared to our 16%. And so that essentially causes the problem we have on the road. The gap is widening. You can see for yourself here compared to this. Public users growth is only, public transport users growth is only about 3% versus private sector. And there are 11 million cars, 9 million motorbikes, 500,000 new cars every year. The car industry, motor industry, they're very happy. 5 more cars, please, you know. But I guess it will be more Proton, Sagas, and Myvis, and the rest. Okay, this is interesting. This was a study done, and it showed that how long does it take to go to KLCC from various parts of Selangor? Yeah? And they, not even Selangor, this is really Klang Valley, yeah? Greater Klang Valley. And all this in the red means more than 300 minutes. So for public transportation, it takes 300 minutes for most places to get to KLCC. You know what's 300 minutes, right? I don't know. This will sound a very long time. I think by private car, you cannot blame people for using private vehicles as such. Right? For private cars, generally it's still in the green zone in about an hour or so. Right? But here's another study which says that by 2030, if we allow this to continue, private car users. Alright? It's going to get to a situation where it's going to be pretty difficult for you to move around if you are going to continue to depend on private cars. So the only way for us to go forward and expect to be able to be sustainable is public vehicles, public transportation, and a strong public infrastructure system. So a new system is most definitely needed. This is the current public transportation system, and probably the reason why many people are not using it. Top of the list in terms of satisfaction, or should I say least dissatisfied, will be the LRT. Okay? The satisfaction level is pretty low. Generally, satisfaction level is pretty high, 60%. Bottom of the list is KTM. Right? So a lot of work needs to be done to really enhance our public transport system. Surprising, taxi is still better than buses. Despite all that you hear about our taxi drivers in KL, and all the complaints you hear about them pleasing you, charging more exorbitant, don't use meter, they're still considered relatively acceptable. Right? That shows the level of issues we have with our public transportation. So, the way forward is a new system. And this is where we actually, as an organization, we actually have helped to bring in some new ideas to the government, and which have since been incorporated into the Greater KL Master Plan. In the past, there were basically these 2 lines, which is your LRT lines. And we suggested to the government that despite the part of the NKRA, which is to extend the 2 LRT lines so they become much longer and cover a much bigger coverage, but the 2 LRT line has 2 major problems, one of which is the connectivity. There's only one point where they actually meet, right? And so because of that, if I want to go from Bandar Utama to go to Bukit Jalil to watch Arsenal play Liverpool, you got to go down to the city center and come out again. It just doesn't make sense, right? And of course, the second problem with the current system is that with these 2 lines, it's just not enough to reach out to all the suburbs, especially on this side and on this side. So our proposal to the government of Malaysia is that let's do another 3 lines by way of the mass rapid transit. And they have studied it, they found that it actually makes a lot of sense. And they got some independent contractors or consultants, Helcro and others, to study the whole options. And Pemandu did a lot of labs to find out whether it works. conclusion was actually very positive, and that's why we decided to go ahead with this infrastructure development. So these are some of the reasons why we wanted to propose this, right? And it has been something that we think will benefit the country, most definitely our Klang Valley. This is the first line, the Sungai Buloh Kajang line, which goes from Sungai Buloh all the way down Kajang. At 51 kilometers, which is here, 9.5 kilometers is underground inside the city center, so they will not disrupt traffic any more than necessary. But the rest of it is elevated. Cost is a lot lower when you build it on an elevated basis. If we have the money, of course, we can do everything underground, but that would be a lot more costly and a lot slower. Total number of stations, 31, 7 of them is going to be underground. Okay, so going forward, there will be 3 lines altogether. If everything works out, the first line that we are building now, going to Kajang. The second line will go down this way to Kapung and cut down this way and end up in Putrajaya, right? So if you're living in Serdang, UBM, you have another alternative apart from the KTM commuter. The third line will be a circular line that connects this way. So that at the end of the day, you will have better connectivity. MRT did a study, or rather, Pemandu did a study, and they found that the MRT will serve over 64% of those people who travel in and out of the CBD, right? On top of that, it will cover, in fact, most of the areas in the CBD. There will be stations within 400 meters walking distance, right? Within 400 meters. So 400 meters is quite manageable, even with our hot, humid Kuala Lumpur weather, it's still manageable. Of course, here in Melbourne, with this kind of weather, you can walk a kilometer and don't feel anything, right? Try that in KL. So all these spots here are the 400-meter circumference, and you can see that this is where all the stations are located. And essentially, the study suggests that most part of the Kuala Lumpur and key areas of the CBD will be covered. Okay? And outside the CBD, then it will be by means of a feeder bus system with the intention of a 1 kilometer radius from all the railway stations outside of CBD. So effectively, you have a much better coverage after this. And therefore, people will be able to commute much easier. And the disadvantage of using public system today would be overcome. The biggest disadvantage today is no connectivity, don't know where to park your cars to get to the station, and the poor feeder bus system at this point. And then all these hopefully will be overcome. The line 2 will also become a catalyst for future development, both in terms of property, all these areas will become areas for growth, right? Line 2 will cut across areas that is not quite yet so well developed, and so they will give you impetus for growth as well. Okay, so the MRT project, according to Pemandu, will contribute to Greater KL's GNI aspiration with massive spillover impact. Of course, this is a prelim estimate and maybe a little bit generous, not so conservative. So they talk about 130,000 people jobs can be created. We provided some of the numbers. I'm not too sure whether 130,000 is a fair number, but the study suggests that with a spillover effect to subcontractor level and manufacturers of construction equipment and construction material and so on and so forth, it could create some 130,000 jobs, 3 to 4 billion in terms of direct GNI contribution. And property appreciation, when you are well connected by the MRT, it becomes a lot easier to go to the city and work. That will increase the value of the houses and so on. 1.2 million square feet of commercial area and residential area will be enhanced, right? And that contributes about 300 million. Unleashing productivity of workers, and of course that's a major one, right? Because that means people can go to work faster, smoother. You can sit on the MRT or stand in the MRT, and you can read your book, or you're going there, or prepare your notes, or you're going to work and things like that, right? and or you do your yoga meditation. Which is what some people do in UK. I've seen that happening, in the underground. The guy would just sit there and close his eyes and his phone. Not a bad idea actually. And when you become very good at standing on the tube, you can actually stand and meditate as well. I can't. Every time I turn the whole video, and that contributes to 200 billion savings per year. Well, that's from Kathmandu, okay? The total net GNI increase, impact will be about 21 billion in the year 2020, when all the 3 lines are completed. That's quite a lot of money, right? 21 billion, good money. I hope I get a portion of that. So these are some of the major spins off, right? Better quality of life, reduced fuel usage, definitely with our current system where fuel is subsidized. This is a big plus when you reduce the usage of fuel and petrol and things like that. Environmental benefits, most definitely so. You will be greener. MRT runs on electricity, and hopefully a power plant is not churning out sulfur though. But by and large, if you've got a good power plant, if they are environmentally friendly and you're running on electricity, you're not spilling out more carbon dioxide into the air, this is good for us, definitely. Yeah. And creation of jobs, I already pointed out just now, potentially 130,000 jobs available, and all of you can be one of that 130,000. Multi-layer spillover, property, businesses, and so on and so forth. And of course, GDP contribution overall, right? So if you talk about infrastructure development, then this is what can happen. If you build, if you expand, then it creates value. A good case example is London. I'm sure you've heard of this place called the Canary Wharf. Some of you might have. And Canary Wharf was dead at one point. It used to be some dockland area and stuff like that. And basically, it was just nothing. And then what they did was they built the Dockland Rail. Yeah? And once they built that, it creates the possibility of having people move there and set up businesses there. And then the real estate came in to start developing the area into commercial districts and so on and so forth. Today, Canary Wharf is an example of success in terms of urban renewal and regeneration. And I understand that the GDP that they have recovered, or GNI, not GDP, sorry, that they have recovered from there is much higher, about 3 times higher than what they spent on building the infrastructure, right? So infrastructure have a major role to play to develop the nation. I'm not able to here talk further about the other parts outside of Klang Valley, because that would be another discussion. You have the double track, the electrified double track now. It goes all the way up to Padang Besar. And again, green, no spilling of carbon dioxide into the air. And double track doesn't mean that you increase the traffic flow by 2. Double track means you can increase the traffic flow any number up to even 10 times. Because last time, you have one line, one train up, one train down, and you have to meet somewhere, otherwise they will hit each other. You have to cross over, right? So you can only manage that much. With double track, you can put as many trains as you want, as long as there's sufficient headroom. You can put 3 or 4 trains on the line at one go, so long as there's sufficient headroom, head to tail. And so that's going to increase the productivity of railway many times, so long as KTM can capitalize on it. Right? And the only slight problem with the electrified double track now is the last mile between Germas and Singapore is not done yet. If you can complete that, then you have a complete rail system all the way north to south.